It's been more than 37 years since Baywatch first hit the air, but few people have heard about the real ocean rescue on a California beach that, 12 years before the cameras ever rolled, quietly became the secret origin of the entire show. Remember those Saturday afternoons, red swimsuits, David Hasselhoff sprinting toward the surf in slow motion, and Pamela Anderson turning into the most photographed face on television anywhere in the world. What we saw on screen was strange enough, but what happened behind the scenes was even stranger. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts you probably never knew about Baywatch. And stick around for the very end, because fact number 1 is going to take you somewhere you probably never expected an American beach show to end up. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because trust me, the last one on this list connects the whole show to a piece of your own childhood you probably never expected. Number 15. Every time you see Mitch Buchanan stride out of the surf with that lifeguard captain authority, you're watching a show that only exists because of a real ocean rescue that happened 12 years before the cameras ever rolled. Now, picture the scene. A working lifeguard on duty at a beach in Los Angeles. An ordinary shift like any other. The kind of afternoon that would normally never make it into anyone's life story at all. But that lifeguard was Greg Banan, and in 1977, he pulled the children of Stu Irwin Jr., an executive at GTG Entertainment, out of a dangerous riptide at Will Rogers State Beach. The reason this matters is simple. Irwin was so grateful that he helped Banan get a meeting with NBC executive Brandon Tartikoff to pitch the idea for the show. And here's the part that makes it even better. Banan had no industry background whatsoever. He wasn't a producer, wasn't a writer, wasn't an agent. He was a lifeguard with a real story that no spec script could have matched. That's exactly why he insisted on real rescue consultants, real equipment, and on always keeping one actual working Los Angeles County lifeguard in the main cast. The set itself was built directly above the real Will Rogers State Beach lifeguard headquarters, with mirrored windows so the on-duty guards could keep working their real shifts without the filming getting in their way. Every heroic-looking save you watched on Saturday afternoons was happening just a few feet above real lifeguards doing the exact same thing, except for real. Without that 1977 rescue, there is simply no meeting, no pilot order, and no series. Take a second with that. A show that defined the visual identity of an entire decade of television, watched by more than 1,100,000,000 viewers a week at its peak, depends entirely on two kids drifting into the wrong current on the wrong beach on the exact day Greg Banan happened to be on duty. No market research, no creative committee, no network executive could have designed a starting point like that, no matter how hard they tried. The show that would eventually reach 1 billion viewers a week owes its entire existence to an ordinary lifeguard shift that could have gone completely unnoticed. Number 14. Before the show was called Baywatch, it almost kept a name nobody today would remember. The working title was ACES, short for Aquatic Corps for Emergency Service. It sounds more like a procedures manual than a pop culture phenomenon. Producers eventually replaced it with the name of the actual red and white rescue boats Los Angeles County lifeguards had been using for decades, with a logo designed by Banan's longtime friend and fellow lifeguard John Johnson. The bigger near miss, though, was the face of the entire franchise. The role of Mitch Buchanan was reportedly offered first to Tom Selleck, who turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast as a sex symbol. After Magnum, PI producers then reportedly considered Lorenzo Lamas, William Catt, Tom Wopat, and Adrian Paul before David Hasselhoff entered the conversation, freshly finished with Knight Rider on NBC. And here's the part that makes it even better. Hasselhoff has said in interviews that he initially dismissed the project as, quote, Knight Rider in a bathing suit, and had to be talked into it. That matters enormously because Hasselhoff was never just the star. He would become the show's executive producer, its international selling point, and the person who kept it alive when the network canceled it outright. Selleck's version of Mitch would have had a completely different energy, tougher, more Magnum, more grounded dramatic authority. Just picture that famous mustache behind the rescue tube, and the whole tone of the show shifts in your imagination. And by any reasonable measure, the list of names considered before Hasselhoff reads today like the cast of an entire parallel universe of 80s television, one where Lorenzo Lamas runs down the beach in slow motion instead of Hasselhoff, and where we probably wouldn't even be talking about this show 37 years later. It's worth sitting with that thought the next time a rerun comes on. The entire look of the franchise hinged on a handful of casting decisions that could easily have gone the other way. Number 13. The lead was almost a completely different person's TV son as well. Jeremy Jackson played Hobie Buchanan across 9 seasons, becoming the kid every Baywatch fan grew up watching from the syndicated premiere onward. But according to David Hasselhoff's own retellings and the After Baywatch documentary series, a young Leonardo DiCaprio reportedly came close to landing that exact role first. Now, as the story goes, Hasselhoff himself reportedly pushed back, concerned that placing a visibly teenage actor opposite him would make Mitch look too old on screen. So the part went to Brandon Call for the original NBC pilot, then to Jeremy Jackson when the syndicated relaunch began. DiCaprio went on to book Growing Pains instead, which led directly to What's Eating Gilbert Grape and his first Academy Award nomination. And here's the part that makes it even better. He walked away from the most watched show on earth and straight into an art house career that made him one of the defining movie stars of the next 30 years. Jackson stayed for 9 seasons, and his long arc on the show, along with the difficult personal struggles documented afterward, became one of the most discussed and quietly heartbreaking stories in the After Baywatch documentary decades later. 2 careers split completely apart because of a single producing decision about whether one actor made another look too old on camera. That fork happened quietly between seasons, with no announcement and no fanfare, and then real life delivered its own plot twist. While Jackson was still filming rescue scenes in Malibu, DiCaprio was only a couple of years away from standing on an Oscar stage. Neither of them knew it yet. Watch those early Hobie scenes again, knowing that a pre-Gilbert Grape DiCaprio was ever in that conversation at all, and the entire episode starts to feel like a glimpse of a show that never actually happened. Number 12. Another major star did eventually show up on this series, just later, and in a form nobody recognized at the time. In 1999, Jason Momoa was 19 years old, had absolutely no acting experience, and showed up to a Baywatch audition in Honolulu. He said he was chosen out of 1,300 people to play a lead role on Baywatch Hawaii, adding without any false modesty that he didn't even know how to act. He was cast as Hawaiian lifeguard Jason H. Hawaiian for seasons 10 and 11. And that was the only acting credit on his resume before Stargate Atlantis, Game of Thrones, and Aquaman. He also met his first fiancée, Australian actress Simone Jade McKinnon, on the Hawaii set during that same shoot. Now, here's the detail that makes this more than a fun footnote. The Hawaii seasons only existed because the original relocation plan, filming in Australia, had just been blocked by a local council. Without that failed pivot, Baywatch never lands in Honolulu, and Momoa isn't in the casting pool at all. No Hawaii era means no early screen credits for the future Khal Drogo and Aquaman. Those Hawaii episodes, rarely discussed in Baywatch retrospectives, now function as accidental archival footage of one of the biggest action stars of the 2020s, completely unformed, teaching himself to perform in front of a camera in real time. And by any reasonable measure, Momoa himself, now one of the most recognizable faces in action movies, probably doesn't even think of that audition as a turning point, even though it absolutely was. It's genuinely strange to think that footage of a future Aquaman, fumbling through his very first line, reads as sitting somewhere in the Baywatch Hawaii archives, largely forgotten by the show's own retrospectives. Number 11. The reason Baywatch ended up in Hawaii at all is one of the stranger production stories in 1990s television history. The original plan for the show's 1999 relocation was Avalon Beach in New South Wales, Australia. The working title was Baywatch Down Under. A pilot was actually filmed before Pittwater Council, and local residents voted permanently against the production, citing concerns about environmental damage from a full-scale American television crew operating on that stretch of coast. An entire coastal community said no to Hollywood, and it wasn't a close vote either. By most accounts, the opposition was overwhelming and well-organized, months before anyone in Los Angeles even realized there was a fight brewing. Producers scrambled for a new plan, and Hawaii's Governor Ben Cayetano and the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau stepped in with a tax incentive package worth an estimated $870,000 per episode, eventually climbing to $1,100,000, with 60% required to be spent in-state. The deal included a guaranteed 44-episode order, and the title was contractually required to change to Baywatch Hawaii. Greg Bonan pitched the arrangement personally to Governor Cayetano and executive producer A.E. Massini. Without that diplomatic save, the show's final 2 seasons simply don't exist. The entire Hawaii era, Jason Momoa's casting, the new ensemble overhaul, the sunset of the original Los Angeles cast, happened entirely because a small Australian beach town voted against it in a local council meeting. Take a second with that. The next time you watch the season 10 premiere and notice unfamiliar reefs and a different sky, that's literally the second choice beach. Chosen after the first choice, rejected the production by vote instead of by script. An entire era of the show exists purely because of a rejected zoning meeting on the other side of the planet. Number 10. Before any of this, the show had already died once, and the way it came back is genuinely extraordinary. In the 1989-90 Nielsen ratings, Baywatch placed 73rd out of 103 shows. NBC canceled it in the spring of 1990. Simultaneously, its production company, GTG Entertainment, a joint venture between television legend Grant Tinker and media company Gannett, collapsed into bankruptcy. The show ended up with neither a network nor a studio at the same moment, completely finished, or so it seemed to virtually everyone involved at the time, including some of the people who had spent years building it. Tinker sold the rights back to Greg Bonan for $10. Bonan has recounted the story multiple times. Tinker said, "Write the check right now and take it back." Bonan wrote the check. Tinker never cashed it. He had it framed and returned it to Bonan at the show's 250th episode anniversary. Without that $10 handshake, the rights sit in a bankruptcy and no revival is possible. The show you grew up watching is really just a single NBC season and a forgotten footnote in 1990s television history. The NBC Season 1 episodes, featuring original cast members Sean Weatherly and Billy Warlock, with an entirely different tone and feel, were quietly excluded from the syndication package for years afterward. Most viewers who grew up watching Baywatch in the 1990s have never seen a single frame of that original version. The show they think of as one continuous run was actually 2 separate shows stitched together by a $10 handshake and a lot of stubbornness. Number 9. David Hasselhoff did not simply return to Baywatch as its star, he came back as one of its owners. He partnered with Bonan, Michael Burke, and Douglas Schwartz to revive the show in first-run syndication, reportedly deferring portions of his salary in exchange for an equity stake in the production itself. Fremantle Corp president Paul Talbot told the Baltimore Sun in 1995 that the NBC version cost well above $1 million per episode, while the syndicated version dropped to approximately $800,000, with international pre-sales filling the gap. Hasselhoff described the 4-person revival team this way: "One of us was a writer, one of us was a director, one of us was the lifeguard, and I was the PR guy, the star, keeping up the morale." It's a remarkably modest description for a man who was simultaneously the face of the franchise, its biggest financial backer, and the reason distributors in Germany were willing to write checks before a single new episode had even been shot. Here's why the German pre-sale revenue made the numbers work. Hasselhoff's recording career had already made him a genuine phenomenon across Europe. His song, "Looking for Freedom," spent 8 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the West German charts in 1989, during the exact same weeks the Berlin Wall came down. That pre-existing celebrity had already primed an entire continent to watch whatever he appeared in next. The syndication deal that saved Baywatch was partly underwritten by a German pop music career that had absolutely nothing to do with lifeguards. When you see Hasselhoff smiling on the syndicated-era beach, he's literally watching his own equity appreciate. A number 1 hit on the German pop charts, released while the Berlin Wall was coming down, ended up quietly bankrolling an entire American lifeguard drama. Number 8. The slow-motion beach run is the most parodied shot in 1990s television. Friends did it. Saturday Night Live did it. The Simpsons did it. Every comedy writer of that decade took a swing at it, from network sitcoms to late-night sketch shows to greeting cards sold at drugstore checkout counters. It's Baywatch's entire visual identity compressed into 30 seconds. It was invented because the show ran out of money. Co-creator Michael Burke told interviewers that producers were short on both budget and screen time during production, and invented slow-motion montages specifically to fill the runtime at minimal cost. David Hasselhoff confirmed it to Men's Health directly. That came about organically because we had no money. We didn't have enough financing to finish the show. Greg Bonan had also recently returned from the 1988 Seoul Olympics, with high frame rate footage from the 100-meter dash, which provided the visual template for the look. The technique debuted in the very first NBC episode, Panic at Malibu Pier, and it never left. Every parody, every homage, every reference traces back to an accounting shortfall in a low-budget syndicated production. Every slow-motion sprint is a production IOU wearing sunscreen. The single most imitated visual gag of an entire American television decade started life as a cost-cutting measure nobody expected anyone to remember, let alone parody for 30 years straight. All right, we're at the halfway mark and things are about to get even wilder. Before we hit the top 7, I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Baywatch quote or moment? Drop it in the comments. And if you're enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel grow. Number 7. Pamela Anderson joined Baywatch in Season 3 as CJ Parker and immediately became the show's global face. International ratings surged the year she arrived. Within 2 seasons, the show was reaching its peak worldwide viewership. By virtually every available metric, Anderson transformed Baywatch's global reach almost overnight. She was paid approximately $1,500 per episode her first season. Anderson confirmed the number herself in a 2025 Andy Cohen interview. When asked directly whether she made the same as Hasselhoff, she replied without any hesitation, "Are you kidding? No, of course not, no." Hasselhoff had personally offered her the CJ role after her successful run on Home Improvement. He recognized what the combination of her public profile and CJ's unconventional New Age personality, crystals, meditation, dream interpretation, could do for the show's global appeal in particular. Anderson later told interviewers she was drawn to CJ because the character thought differently, and that philosophical dimension was shaped partly around her own real interests and active input into the role. The gap between Anderson's $1,500 weekly rate and her contribution to the show's billion-viewer audience is one of the starkest compensation imbalances in 1990s television history. The most recognized image in the show's entire run was filmed for roughly $1,500 a week, less than the cost of a modest weekend getaway today. That red swimsuit eventually traveled considerably further than Malibu. By any reasonable measure, an actress paid barely enough to cover rent ended up carrying a show to the largest audience television has ever recorded. Number 6. An original CJ Parker swimsuit is currently a featured centerpiece in the Design Museum, London's 2025 exhibition splash. A century of swimming in style. It was loaned from Germany's Bikini Art Museum, which acquired the suit from David Hasselhoff's personal collection. Curator Amber Butcher told CNN it was one of the costliest individual pieces in the entire exhibition to ensure, sitting alongside items with centuries of design history behind them, despite being, functionally, a piece of 1980s athletic gear. The suits themselves were built from actual Southern California competition lifeguard gear, the real equipment worn by real Los Angeles County guards on duty, then custom-tailored to each actor's specific proportions. That's why they look simultaneously athletic and cinematic. They were designed for function first, and everything else followed. Pamela Anderson has since launched her own swimwear line, explicitly distancing her current aesthetic from what she has described as the performative quality of the Baywatch era. The costume has traveled in a single generation, from TV wardrobe to insured museum artifact. It's the only television costume from its decade currently displayed, alongside Olympic gold medals in a major international design institution. Nobody planned for that outcome, not a single network executive, not a costume designer, and certainly not the production team that fitted the suits on a per-episode turnaround just to save time between takes. The most photographed TV costume of the 90s is now insured for considerably more money than most of the cast members were ever paid to wear it, which honestly is one of the tidiest little ironies in this entire story. Number 5. Nicole Eggert played Summer Quinn across seasons 3 and 4, and was one of the show's most recognizable faces during its early syndicated run. She left, and the general assumption was simply that the revolving cast format was how Baywatch operated, but the real reason is considerably more specific. Eggert revealed on the Still Here Hollywood podcast in 2025 that she had been promised a Beverly Hills 90210 style Baywatch spin-off centered on her character before she agreed to join a beach high school drama built around Summer Quinn. When Baywatch itself became the #1 show in the world, producers canceled the planned spin-off to protect the parent franchise. Eggert left because the show was no longer what she had signed up to do. Erica Eleniak, who played Shawnee McClain through the early syndicated seasons, made a similar exit around the same period. She told the Mercury News that she recognized the moment perfectly. My swan song was the introduction of C.J. Parker, Pamela Anderson's character. And, they hit the lottery. The revolving cast that defined Baywatch's identity was not a creative strategy. It was the direct consequence of protecting a #1 franchise at the expense of the ensemble that originally built it. Every departure opened a slot, and every slot got filled from the exact same pipeline of major magazine exposure first, Baywatch second. Number 4. Carmen Electra arrived on Baywatch as Lanny McKenzie with very little television experience and a great deal of stage presence. Co-star David Chokachi noted publicly that by the time Electra joined, producers had specifically decided the cast needed to do their own water stunts because audience complaints about visible doubles had become a real problem. The kind of viewer feedback that actually reached the writer's room and changed how episodes got planned. Her path to the role is remarkable. Her stage name was personally given to her by Prince after he signed her to Paisley Park Records, produced her self-titled 1993 debut album, and brought her on as his opening act on the Diamonds and Pearls tour. She went directly from MTV's Singled Out in Prince's Glam Slam nightclub to lifeguard duty on the most watched show on Earth. Electra told the After Baywatch docuseries that the stunt requirement came from genuine audience feedback about authenticity, and she delivered. Her first on-screen kiss with Chokachi was, by her own account in the same documentary, significantly more enthusiastic than the script indicated. What reads on screen as sun-drenched beach confidence is actually pop stage performance energy channeled through a red swimsuit. Every smooth, self-assured scene Lonnie McKenzie appears in traces back to tour choreography, not any lifeguard credential. It's a strange kind of full-circle moment when you consider that Prince himself never had anything else to do with the franchise again. Number 3. Alexandra Paul played Stephanie Holden across multiple seasons and has been candid about something the show's sun-soaked reputation tends to obscure. Guest actors routinely lied in auditions about their ability to swim. Treating it the same way people fudge a resume skill they figure they'll never actually be tested on. They assumed stunt doubles would handle the water sequences. On Baywatch's per-episode budget, that assumption was wrong. Paul told the World Open Water Swimming Association that during a Hawaii shoot, a male guest actor she was rescuing on camera actually panicked in open water after the crew boat had left the area. He began drowning for real. Paul, a former junior lifeguard, performed a genuine rescue. The actor later told her she had saved his life. She also revealed that Yasmin Bleeth had a strong aversion to water scenes, leading Paul and David Charvet to informally compete to take each other's rescue assignments as a running competition across multiple seasons. The element that held everything together was Michael Newman, a genuine working Los Angeles County lifeguard who appeared in 109 episodes over 10 seasons, third most of any performer behind Hasselhoff and Jeremy Jackson. He coached every cast member and handled the water sequences no one else could safely execute. He reportedly said of his longevity on the show, "I was too useful for them to get rid of me." Many of those rescue swims involved the actual cast in real open water, which means at least one scene that played on television as scripted drama was, underneath all of it, a genuine emergency with no cameras staged to catch a second take. Number 2. In 1989, Baywatch was the 73rd ranked show on American network television. NBC canceled it. By 1995, the Guinness Book of World Records had certified it as the most watched television program in human history, with an estimated 1,100,000,000 weekly viewers across 142 countries and translations into 33 to 42 languages. 1,100,000,000 people every single week. That figure is roughly double the worldwide television audience that watched the 1969 moon landing, measured continuously week after week for years. Fremantle Corp President Paul Talbot told the Baltimore Sun in July 1995 that he had stopped selling the show by country and was now selling it by language instead. It aired on Rupert Murdoch's Star TV satellite system into China and India. It played on private satellite dishes in Iran. It ran across Eastern Europe and South America simultaneously. The German presale revenue that made the syndication model financially viable was built entirely on Hasselhoff's 1989 music career. Every episode you watched as a teenager was simultaneously airing in Mumbai, Manila, Munich, and a satellite dish somewhere outside Tehran. That simultaneous scale of viewership has not been replicated since. And it all started from 73rd place. By any reasonable measure, a show canceled by an American network and bought back for $10 shouldn't have gone on to double the worldwide audience of the moon landing. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Number 1. Get ready, because this is the fact that promised to take you somewhere unexpected, and it's completely true. In 2004, Baywatch's biggest star ended up saving the day for one of the most beloved animated properties in American television history. David Hasselhoff appeared as himself in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, arriving at the climax to carry SpongeBob and Patrick across the ocean back to Bikini Bottom, using his own body as a living jet ski, while the two of them rode on his back. Now, here's the part that makes it even better. To pull off certain shots, the production crew built a 12 to 13-foot animatronic replica of Hasselhoff, complete with moving parts and realistic hair, so detailed and lifelike that when he later touched it, he said it felt like real skin. Years afterward, in a GQ interview, Hasselhoff revealed that he actually owns that giant replica of himself. When the movie wrapped, the crew asked what to do with the sculpture, and Hasselhoff said, "Essentially, that's ridiculously awesome, I'll take it," drew up a handshake agreement in about 10 seconds, and kept it. Director Mark Osborne has said the sequence deliberately leaned into Hasselhoff's Baywatch fame, turning the lifeguard rescue image American audiences already knew by heart into a piece of full-blown cartoon absurdity, right down to a joke about him getting stabbed in the backside during the big fight scene. For an entire generation of American kids who grew up on Nickelodeon rather than syndicated reruns, this was very likely their first introduction to David Hasselhoff at all, discovering the Baywatch legend backward, through a 13-foot rubber replica, keeping two cartoon best friends afloat. Take a second with that. For millions of American kids born well after Baywatch left the air, Hasselhoff wasn't the lifeguard from the red swimsuit reruns their parents remembered. He was the guy from the SpongeBob movie who could apparently function as a boat. The joke only worked because an entire country already carried around a shared mental image of him running down a beach in slow motion, and by any reasonable measure, that's about as complete a full circle moment as American pop culture gets. A show born out of a real lifeguard rescue eventually turning its own leading man into a literal, cartoonish rescue vehicle for one of Nickelodeon's biggest characters, decades after the original series had already wrapped. Bonus fact, before we close out the countdown. Even lifelong American fans tend to get this one wrong. Baywatch is remembered as a Malibu show, and the 2017 movie leaned hard into that branding, but the original 1980s and 90s series was mostly filmed somewhere else entirely. The predominant filming location for the classic series was Will Rogers State Beach, tucked into the Pacific Palisades neighborhood on Santa Monica Bay, not the town of Malibu itself, even though Malibu sits just up the coast and did occasionally appear on screen. Some scenes were also shot at Zuma Beach and Paradise Cove, both technically within Malibu's city limits, plus additional footage from Long Beach further south, which only adds to the confusion. The lifeguard headquarters exterior everyone remembers wasn't even on the sand at all. It was shot at the former Point Mugu Naval Air Station in Ventura County, standing in for a beachfront building that never actually existed as filmed. So, when American viewers picture the show's home turf, they're usually picturing the right general stretch of Southern California coastline, just the wrong specific beach. A detail that would surprise plenty of people who grew up watching reruns and assume Mitch Buchanan's tower stood on genuine Malibu sand the whole time. Take a second with that. The show's own theme song, its marketing, its slow-motion opening credits, and even its eventual feature film all leaned hard into the word Malibu as shorthand for a certain kind of Southern California glamour, while the actual production trucks spent most of their time parked a few miles south in Pacific Palisades. It's a small geographic sleight of hand that nobody set out to pull off on purpose, but it stuck so thoroughly that even longtime fans planning a nostalgia trip to the real filming locations often end up standing on the wrong stretch of coastline entirely, wondering why it doesn't quite match the postcard image they had in their heads. And there you have it, 15 weird facts, plus one bonus fact, about a show nobody planned to turn into the most watched television program in history, a real ocean rescue, a nearly forgotten name called Aces, a Leonardo DiCaprio who never became Hobie, a young Jason Momoa who didn't know how to act, an Australian town that said no, a bankruptcy solved for $10, a slow-motion sprint invented out of budget desperation, a swimsuit that ended up in a London museum, and a lifeguard captain who once turned into a living jet ski for a cartoon sponge. Tell us in the comments which of these 15 facts surprised you the most. And if you already knew the SpongeBob one, let us know how old you were when you first put those two pieces together. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next countdown. See you in the next one.